more that you can lean into your own personal discomfort, say what needs to be said in a non-offensive way, the more you make the world a better place.
Aha! Social media, great to see you. Here we are on Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time with our weekly live here at Jumpstart Mastery. Great topic from Brenda at B Branding. When work styles collide, turning friction into flow. I have some thoughts about this that to some may seem maybe cliche, but in general, I think they're going to be a unique perspective to many folks. Excuse me, I'm recovering from chest cold from last week. Um, Based on the unique experience that I had working on response teams in psychiatric care and services, those environments where people can present an extraordinary amount of distress and need for intervention flesh out team dynamics pretty quickly. And if they are not dealt with quickly so that a team can work effectively together, the team doesn't work. And then when the team doesn't work, they don't stay in use very long. So uh, I have a perspective that I think is going to offer some value. On Tuesdays, we broadcast on our Jumpstart Mastery Facebook page, our Jumpstart Mastery LinkedIn, our Jumpstart Mastery YouTube, as well as our Instagram page. Um, and you can consume, what we talk about through those platforms. On LinkedIn and on YouTube, they stay recorded. On Facebook, they stay recorded, but on Instagram, they do not. So if you're watching this on Instagram and you're here, if you arrive late and you want to get what you missed, prior to when you started, you can jump over to YouTube or to our Facebook page and consume the whole live there. But I hope that you're with us now in real time, and I look forward to um, wrestling with this topic some. I have a context, but that, I'm a big fan of trying to get down to essentials so that the ideas and the principles that we discuss can be used in any other context. That's also our approach to de-escalation training. I just to go off on that for a moment. Very often, consumers of de-escalation training will want conditions in the training, scenarios, role plays that are consistent with the environment in which they work. So if we were providing de-escalation training services to an agency that serves people living with homelessness, they generally request circumstances that are consistent with that environment. Law enforcement officers, excuse me, law enforcement officers will ask them to pick, let's say, the top 3 most recurring kinds of events that are happening currently that they can train around. And we accommodate those requests. But the thing that we work very hard to avoid is the idea that the de-escalation training they took only benefits those contexts or those scenarios. Instead, we spend a lot of time making sure that people understand we're going to do some work in your context, but we're also going to give you some examples outside of your context so you understand the principle and that you have the mastery around how to apply the principle in any setting. So in that vein, I'm going to try to address the collision of work styles on a team. My context, I have 2 primary contexts with this. One is in the care and services setting. The other one is in the fire service. So, and both of those can be very high stakes team responses, people who have to work together and have different work styles. So let me share with you what happens when this doesn't work, when work styles are colliding and there's friction. Let's say in a care setting, someone on the team does not do particularly well with certain kinds of behaviors that people served can present. whether that's disrespect, whether that's perhaps derogatory comments toward people of a particular race or of a particular gender, and that has to get dealt with. There are certain fundamental principles on teams that need to be brought into the conversation when we have work style, let's say, collision, and that is leadership. Without leadership, without governing principles to which conflict can defer, the idea of resolving conflict is made much harder. So, in an environment where, let's say, physicians have clinical judgment and they anchor bad decisions on clinical judgment, like we're going to restrain or seclude that person when they have not been presenting any immediate risk of serious bodily injury or harm to others or themselves. There's a collision there. There's a collision where someone wants to be very effective at, let's say, controlling a situation in the name of safety. Let's call that a work style. I've been exposed to a lot of that, a work style that would suggest that someone with clinical authority is making a decision to restrict the liberty of another human being when they have not met the criteria for that everyone would agree with. There are times where I've had to enact intervention, control of someone on the basis of that order. Now, that's someone who has some authority in the employer. Within the employer, I'm going to be at odds if I don't follow this instruction that I've been given to effect some kind of seclusion or restraint procedure on a human being. Okay. Now, I have to live with a experience that I'm doing something that I've been ordered to do, that I don't want to do, and that I don't believe is within the guidelines. I have to do something with this. So after the event, I hate to say it, but this sometimes means that we have to keep the priorities short. I have been instructed to carry out, based on a physician's judgment, a procedure that I don't agree with, and something that could very well possibly be in violation of the rules that regulate all of our practice, not just that person's, not just the physician's. When we debrief about this event, that's the time to bring that up. Now, we don't just have a work style there, we have authority issues we have to deal with, and we have an experience that we have to deal with of doing something within the duties that we didn't want to do. We've been instructed to do this. This is where good leadership in the debriefing levels the playing field and leaves, let's say, the room's influence from the hierarchy at the door. In the debriefing environment, where we have to talk about work style and decisions associated to work style, the recommendation, not just from me, but from the debriefing thinkers and authorities, is that we level the playing field and talk about team process and team coordination, and individual performance is not something that we manage in the debriefing. So what do we talk about when we want to solve a work style collision? We have to use, I'd say, I statements. This is an active listening skill. We have to use I statements so as our message lands with another human being without their dignity being taken away or without them feeling offended or criticized. Why? I want the message to land. I want the message to land solidly so that this person potentially reconsiders on the next event. So what if I said to that physician, look, we've been conditioned in our new employee orientation and refresher training to only engage in those procedures when there's a presentation of imminent risk. And by definition, that means that someone is immediately about to be harmed, or potentially this person may be right at the edge of hurting themselves. Uh, I didn't get to see whatever the immediate or imminent risk was that you may have seen, but in the absence of seeing that myself, and in the absence of having anything explained to me about that, I felt very unsafe about the proposition of putting my hands on another human being and restricting them from movement and then escorting them to a place where they're not going to really want to be there. They're not going to want to be in the seclusion room. Most people resist that movement. They're not going to be, they're not going to want to be in mechanical restraint. Most people resist going there. And I have to incur the risk associated to your decision. So in future, it would really be helpful if you, upon making that decision, clearly stated to me in the short period of time that we have what the imminent risk is. That would enable me to not only feel better about the decision to do this, but it would also give me some strategic advantage when having to manage the person, because I might be able to talk about that a little bit about why, because I'm going to get asked why when we have to go affect this, and I need to have some working knowledge of that. So what did I just example there? I exampled an opportunity to become vulnerable by speaking about my needs. Thank you, Marshall Rosenberg from Nonviolent Communication. And speaking about my feelings using words that accurately describe the feeling state: anxious, afraid, concerned, apprehensive, reticent, confused. These are words that relay conditions of what someone is experiencing. I absolutely want someone who's making critical decisions associated to my safety to know that. This can be very useful in improving the method by which people who have to work together using different work styles effectively do their job, because minimally we're not operating in a vacuum. That person, hopefully next time when making that kind of a decision, is going to say, I see that Andy is here, and Andy is going to want to know why I'm ordering this. So I better be sure to honor that if I expect Andy to continue carrying out my orders associated to these kinds of procedures, which are very high risk. Well, Andy, you're describing a context in a hospital. How does that help me at the, at the barista counter? Okay, well, if we're having work style collision, let's say someone is very efficient in their communication, not particularly friendly. They're not unfriendly, but they're not particularly friendly, and they're all business because that's what's important to them. And then someone else on the team might be very relational. They'll spend a little extra time at the counter with someone who's buying a coffee, or they'll spend a little extra time with someone in the cafe area to ensure that someone's having a good experience. And this is obviously very different than the efficiently minded person. And let's say the efficiently minded person has some problem with the fact that the interactions to sell coffee and snacks are taking longer because of this relationship nonsense. And as a result, I don't like working when this person gets assigned on my shift, because they have this manner of doing things that's not the way that I do them. Well, what's a good way to solve that? Get out of the direct service environment, not in the environment. Get out of the direct service environment and review the governing principles. What are the governing principles? Let's say one of the governing principles are ensuring that customers have a positive experience, and that they leave the establishment as satisfied as can be. You then have an opportunity in relationship to that governing principle to have a conversation about how one expresses themselves. This might allow the two people with two different work styles to say, my expression of this work style is to really work hard to ensure the person is satisfied. But I can appreciate, because you are very efficiently minded and want to move people through so they're not waiting online and they're being treated promptly. Those are other considerations of customer satisfaction. And I will try to be more aware of how long my interactions can be with some customers, because I'm interested in working effectively with you, and maybe we can have common understanding. And maybe the efficiently minded person says, I appreciate that your expression of customer satisfaction are these meaningful interactions that you have. And the way that I'm wired, I just generally don't do that with people. And I would like to believe that because I don't, that you don't see that there's anything wrong with me. I'm interested in people getting on with their lives. That's how I attend to customer satisfaction. So I will focus on efficiency and making sure they get their order promptly. And it's one of the reasons why I don't talk real long to customers. So now that we better understand each other, hopefully we'll be sensitive to one another a little bit more on the next transaction. Maybe the person who's really interactive reduces the amount of time they ordinarily dedicate to an interaction, because they know another form of customer service expression, because we reviewed these governing principles together, is getting people out of here quickly, and so people aren't waiting online. Turning friction into flow between people with different work styles is going to be driven by each person becoming vulnerable in their self-appraisal, and then referring to the governing principles that are the rules by which we work together in groups. Groups do not work well together if there aren't shared terms, shared values. It's very hard for a group of completely independent thinkers and doers to work together without governing principles. So the governing principles are fundamentally important. It shouldn't be surprising that in our de-escalation method, verbal de-escalation skills protocol, VDSP, validate, defer, suggest, and prompt, when we defer to something, what are we deferring to? Something bigger than you and me. Something bigger than just what's happening in between us at the moment. What is the thing that we share? What is the commitment? And to what do we share obligation? Conditions of employment, policies of the employer, protocols. Try deviating from protocol when you're working on an ambulance with EMTs that have all been trained the same way, and watch what happens. You want to see work styles collide? Watch what happens when life-saving protocols over basic life support or advanced life support are deviated from on a recurring basis. That can be a really hot environment to work in, because everyone is, let's say, very, very conditioned to adhere to the governing principles. The sequence in which we do things, the time spent, we have a rapid and thorough, and then we have evaluation, and then we have a more detailed evaluation. You do the rapid and thorough first, then you do a more detailed evaluation. You don't do that in reverse. And when people start deviating from the protocols in that setting, I'll share this with you. When the stakes are life and death, people argue about this stuff a lot less. It's when the stakes are not as serious that people can turn work style conflict into like foreign policy conflict, and it doesn't have to be that. What needs to be invoked are the governing principles, and what needs to be invoked are minimally a state of vulnerability where you can describe what you're feeling and what you need. In the fire service, that's where EMS lives very often. This was a recurring theme. Let's say a work style is high risk, someone willing to take risk. I had one of those work styles when working in an EMS capacity where, for example, let's say there was a domestic dispute, and there was some violence and someone is injured. But when the dispatch goes out on domestic disturbances where there's been violence or injury, the protocols in my county are you wait until law enforcement clears that scene. So I would say things to the chief like, Chief, you know who I am. Let me go make sure someone's not bleeding out, because so we're standing around waiting for the police to come, because this could take a long time. And the chief would have to remind me that's not the protocol. The protocol is law enforcement has to clear the scene. We only risk a lot to save a lot. And right now, I don't want any of my EMTs shot. So somewhere I needed to square with this. I needed to accept there are principles bigger than me and my work style that govern what we do. And I'm going to have to figure out how to live with this, which I eventually did. And interestingly, most of the time, my impulse to want to go in there and attend to someone's well-being under high risk turned out to be something that was not that necessary. There were a couple of times where the delay didn't help, but most of the time it really didn't hurt that much. And I was able to accept that. I was able to allow experience to be my teacher in that setting. So the governing principles mean something. I'll close with this. My dear pal, who I love, Dr. Kevin Huckshorn, wrote the 6 core strategies to reduce seclusion, restraint, and violence for NASHPED. That's the National Association of State Mental Health Program Directors. And she did this as a research project, which ultimately the 6 core strategies became the only evidence-based practice in behavioral health that addresses these concerns to this day. When she wrote the 6 core strategies along with her team, they made the first core strategy leadership toward organizational change. Because if you don't have leadership, if you don't have governing principles, guess what doesn't work? The use of data to inform practice, seclusion and restraint reduction tools, workforce development, the use of peers, and meaningful debriefing. If you don't have leadership and governing principles that galvanize teams together when there's work style friction, if you don't have leadership, it's much harder to work those difficulties out. So be vulnerable, use I statements, say what you're feeling and needing, and be accurate about what a feeling is and what a need is. Use words that accurately describe what you feel, and use words that accurately describe what you need. And refer to the governing principles. Refer to the things that help teams work together. I hope you were able to get some meaning out of this and really enjoy doing them. Join us on Thursday at the Jumpstart Mastery Network, where we also go live for professionals in our network community. It's completely free. Just go to jumpstartmastery.com if you're not a member there already and set up a free access user account. I wish you all the best. Take good care.